Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. How's it going, all you minties? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for your overview of the Young Justice Omnibus, Volume 1 from DC Comics. So let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. So what we're looking at here is the Young Justice Omnibus Volume 1. Love seeing that Volume 1 on there. I'm a big fan of this series. I had it actually custom bound, oh my gosh, almost 10 years ago. Just because I love the series so much, and I didn't think we were ever going to get this. And here we are. One of my most wanted DC Omnis, and it's finally here. With our main cast of characters right here. And then, of course, what came before. Peter David, Todd Nauck, Larry Stucker, and Jason Wright. Omnibus Volume 1, love it. The logo right there, Secret, Superboy, Wonder Girl, Impulse, Robin, and Arrowette. And then the spine of the book showcasing that same image. Young Justice Omnibus Volume 1, Peter David, Todd Nauck, Larry Stucker, and Jason Wright. The DC logo right there. We start seeing this pattern coming across to the back here with some more artwork by Todd Nauck. Robin, Superboy, and Impulse getting the top billing because they are the formation of the team. It's not until issue 4 that these, well, Arrowhead isn't even on here. 3 young ladies end up joining the team. But the one person that's missing is Red Tornado. So let's see what's underneath the dust jacket. And actually look at the flaps right here. There's Arrowette. And what you have here is just the bio and the creators. Peter David, Todd Nauck, Larry Stucker, Jason Wright, and Ken Lopez. But there are a lot of creators whose work you're going to be seeing through here. And then you have this image right here from Humberto Ramos and Mike McCone. And this is the wraparound image. This is from issue number 1 of World Without the Justice League. And that's kind of the story that kicks off the series. So we are going to be talking about the series. We're going to be looking at the artwork. I'm going to be giving you the pitch and how all of it got started. And then, of course, some of the storylines that you're going to be finding through here. Then we'll look at the extras in the back. So if you don't want any kind of spoilers, but I don't know, mileage may vary. But minor spoilers. Let's go ahead and crack it open and take a look in here. Okay, let's go ahead and crack this book open. We have some black end sheets. The Young Justice Omnibus Volume 1 featuring those 6 characters again. And then, my goodness, the credits. Peter David, Todd Nauck, Larry Stucker, Jason Wright, Ken Lopez taking the top billing. But you're going to see familiar names through here. Humberto Ramos, Scott Beatty, Chuck Dixon, Carl Kessel, Mike McCone, Carlo Barberi, Kerry Nord, and Chris Ivey, and Mark McKenna, Robin Riggs, and Tom McGraw, and also Joe Rosas, one of my favorite colorists of all time. And then you got your lettering here by Ken Lopez, but you also have John Workman and Bill Oakley, just to name a few. So, I mean, there was a lot of people working on this particular series. Your table of contents right here, another, well, actually, this is a cover right there by Todd Nauck. And there's an introduction by Todd Nauck right here, explaining how all of this got started, and more of the table of contents where you're going to find these particular issues. But more importantly, when they came out. It all kicked off in June of 1998. And this series holds a special place in my heart because it always reminds me of coming back to comics and finding one of my favorite writers and an artist I had just found before leaving comics working on this particular series. And that is Todd Nauck. So Todd Nauck explains a little bit how he ended up getting the job, how he was petitioning to DC, because at the time he was working with Rob Liefeld. But it's a really sweet letter, especially if you're familiar with, the history of comics and also the history of Image and just how much talent, my goodness, how much talent there was those first few years when every studio within Image Comics was just hiring these new artists. So we kick it off with Young Justice, The Secret, and I remember Todd Nauck's artwork. It was in this series called Newman, and it was part of the Extreme Studios. And I was like, oh man, this guy's going to be big. I really like his anime style, but he's got that Tom Grumet look to it too. Great mix, and sure enough, I found out that he did this series through one trade paperback, The Sins of Youth, which I'll talk a little bit about here in a few. But what's collected in here? So collected in here is, as you see here, the Young Justice Secret one-shot, Young Justice 1 through 19, Young Justice 1 million, JLA World Without Grown-Ups, the 2-issue miniseries, Young Justice Secret Files number 1, The Secret Origins 80-page giant number 1 of Young Justice, Young Justice No Man's Land special, Supergirl 36 and 37, Superboy number 74, The Sins of Youth, Young Justice 1 and 2, which is what kicks off that big event. And then The Sins of Youth, Secret Files number 1, Sins of Youth, JLA Jr., Aqua Boy and Lagoon Man number 1, Batboy and Robin number 1, Kid Flash and Impulse number 1, Star Woman and the JSA number 1, the Superman Jr. and Superboy Sr. number 1, and Sins of Youth, Wonder Girls, and Secret and Dead Boy number 1. 1,272 pages. The book retails for $150. So what is Young Justice? When is all this taking place? Well, as I mentioned, it was in 1998, so it is around the time that Grant Morrison was writing JLA. Then, of course, eventually it became Mark Waid. Joe Kelly ended up taking it, Chris Claremont, John Byrne. But it was around that era of the 90s that this came out. And it was when the Teen Titans decided, hey, we no longer want to be Teen Titans. We're old enough to be Titans. And, of course, I'm talking about the Teen Titans with Nightwing, Dick Grayson, that started off as Robin, of course, and then became Nightwing, and that team went on to become the Titans. So there was this void that was missing from DC Comics for these sidekicks that had their own series. Impulse had his own series, Superboy had his own series, and so did Tim Drake Robin. But they needed a team. It felt like there was something missing. So it was petitioned, or rather the idea was pitched that, okay, we're going to have a Justice League team. It's going to be called the Justice League Junior team. And it will all kick off with this storyline from the Girl Frenzy, I think it was called, the 5th week event called Young Justice The Secret, where these 3 boys will come together to help out this mysterious young lady known as Secret. And she will remain being called The Secret. I think eventually they call her Susie or something like that. You don't find out her identity or her name until much later. But she's a captive of the Department of Extra-Normal Operations. So the DEO, though. Makes sense. So the DEO has kind of lied to them, saying that this thing that has broken out is a risk to this town, so you need to recapture it, making the kids think that it's a monster, but it's this young lady. So instead of capturing her and putting her back in the hands of the DEO, they just let her go. And, they mention, like, sure enough, we work together well. And one of the things that I forgot to mention is that they are all being interrogated. And it turns out that it was the Justice League being the ones that are interrogating them, along with Max Mercury. And it's interesting that Batman's like, yes, we all have our secrets, don't we? Batman cracking a joke. And then we get The World Without Grown-Ups, this Justice League miniseries, and this is where the Mike McCone artwork comes from, Humberto Ramos. And both of them are drawing this. Like, Mike McCone is doing the kids, and then eventually it will be Humberto Ramos drawing the kids. And what this is introducing this new villain named Bedlam, who pretty much takes all the adults from our world and puts them into an alternate reality, leaving the kids here in charge of our world to become the superheroes. And the most interesting, or I guess the most important thing that happens out of this is kind of the tease of the ongoing series. Yes, these 3 right here end up finding this Justice League cave where the Justice League used to hang out. Now they have the Watchtower, of course. So they end up actually making it their own, and they call it the Justice Cave. And it's also teased that they may not be alone. That, and this is Humberto Ramos drawing these, who of course Humberto Ramos had drawn Impulse. And Todd Nauck draws heavy inspiration from Humberto Ramos. But it's also teased that somebody else might be joining them. And that is Red Tornado. That's who was missing from the cover. So we kick it off with issue number 1 right here. And There's so many jokes throughout here. And this is why it took me 2 weeks to do this overview, because I was going back and forth and reading these stories because I love these stories so much. And anytime I started to skim, I'm like, no, it's worth to read the dialogue. And I promise I'm not going to spoil anything big. I'm just kind of letting you know what the setup is and who the main characters are going to be and who some of the big players are going to be through here. But there's so many in jokes, even like Peter David making fun of his own Aquaman run, like seeing a batarang for Tim's left hand there. Play on the whole Aquaman losing his hand. But it starts off with nightmares, and they're being plagued by nightmares. Eventually, Red Tornado wakes up, and it's really interesting. Like, he does a character study of each of the kids, and letting them know that they are all the Freudian archetypes, all three of them. So you have the id, you have the ego, and you have the super ego. The most likely to become the leader of the team. And then, I mean, there's ridiculous jokes in here too, like this young lady right here. Oh, what is her name? Yes, right here. There she is. Her name is Nina Dowd. So it's endowed, and then she becomes the mighty endowed. And her chest is a little too big, so she falls, and she can't support her own weight when she becomes this feline character. And this is where they get the names from, right here, where it kind of reminds me of the old Captain Marvel, the Marvel story, where this guy's like, hey, you guys are the Young Justice League of America, right? Like the Teen Titans. And Impulse is like, no, we're young, but just us. Oh, okay, Young Justice. And that's where the name came from in issue number 1. And we also find the Super Cycle here. And the Super Cycle is this sentient vehicle that they will use throughout the entire series. It has its own origins, and you can find out for yourself what that is. By the way, mapped beautifully, we have the DC 1 million storyline in here that kind of sets up some of the stories for later on. And the important thing to note is that this series was not intended for Peter David to write. Todd DeZago was actually going to be the writer on the series, but eventually I think he took on another job, or maybe he was just doing too much, that he ended up leaving the ongoing series. Like, he didn't even start. So DC knocked on Peter David's door, and Todd Nauck and Peter David started working together. But it was supposed to be the two Todds working on this particular series. Remember when I said that it's mapped well? This is the 80-page giant right there, retelling origins of these characters. So you have Humberto Ramos' artwork here. You also have Joe Phillips with Carl Kessel writing this. Mark Waid writes a story in here. The Robin story, this one is by Chuck Dixon, and it is drawn by Cully Hammer. You have a spoiler story in here, Chuck Dixon, and drawn by Amanda Connor. You have the story here of Wonder Woman. This one is by Jay Farber and Ethan Van Sciver supplying the artwork. Looking a little mix of John Byrne with Humberto Ramos. And then we get to issue number 4. With the No Girls Allowed, Keep Out. This is our boy cave. But this is where these 3 ladies end up joining the team. One of them being Arrowette. She is the daughter of Miss Arrowette. I think she was all the way from the Golden Age. Then we have Cassie, one of my favorite characters to come out of John Byrne's Wonder Woman run, end up joining the team. She's still wearing her wig. Because she might look different than what you're probably used to, but during this time she was still keeping her secret identity by wearing that wig. And then Secret ends up joining the team. They fight their, I guess up until now, their most formidable opponent, and that is this guy named Harm, who's going after like a young vigilante group to prove that he is a worthy villain. But he does play a big role through here. We have the Secret Files and Origins here, and that leads into the Harm storyline. This is actually lost pages about that misendowed or mighty endowed character. One of the coolest things that this omnibus has is all these extras. Behind every cover, just about, there is the original sketches and layouts for said cover. Like Todd Nauck at the intro talked about how he sent off a bunch of stuff for DC to use for this book. So a lot of this stuff has not been collected, like the extra stuff. This stuff has been collected in a series of trade paperbacks, of course, but a bunch of those extras have not. They end up fighting JLA villains. I'm sure you saw Mr. Mixoplex or however you all pronounce his name, Despero here, and characters show up from their own runs too, like Superboy, with this character right here, Double X and Match shows up through here. But I think Peter David does a really good job of just encompassing everything that makes their titles work individually and putting them together as a team. And of course, the three ladies didn't have their own ongoing series. This is the 80-page giant number 1 right here, which recaps pretty much what's happened and adds, oh, this is when Bedlam shows back up and takes them to different timelines. Like you have the cowboy storyline, you have a noir story, you have a horror story through here, a war type of story, and a manga type of story. And one of the most amazing things about this book that I love so much, and both my brother and I love this run, is that Peter David, much like his run in X Factor, and much like his run in Captain Marvel, just makes you care about these characters that you probably have never heard of. Like there is a powerful freaking issue with Arrowhead in here that does make you question, like, wait, is she doing the right thing? Or is she making a mistake? And where do you side with her? This is just wonderful issues like that Peter David is able to just make you question, even to an extent, a little bit of your own morality. Like, which way would you go? Lagoon Boy ends up doing this special right here. This is the No Man's Land special. This is the one that's written by Chuck Dixon. He's a character that first appeared in the pages of Eric Larson's Aquaman run after Peter David. So Peter David didn't create him. Now, he does end up joining the team, but not quite yet. He actually shows up later on, too, towards the end of this particular book with the Sins of Youth storyline. But let's just keep flipping through here. As you could probably tell, Todd Nauck ends up drawing the majority of the Young Justice issues. That's why he gets the top billing. Almost said Todd billing. And you do have the crossover here with Supergirl that features the Dante character, which is so ridiculous. And that leads into another big story arc. And this is the Arrowhead storyline I was talking about. And you can find out for yourself exactly what I meant by a powerful story. But if you're familiar with Peter David, then you probably know that it hits right in the feels. Now, being that they're kids in the DC universe, the DEO actually steps in a lot and tries to make them stop being superheroes, like, saying that they're actually causing more harm than anything. So they even introduce their own kind of characters through here. You have the Old Justice, which is like they're a newly formed team of like Golden Age sidekicks, and there's also the, what are they called? The Point Men, that's what they're called, which are actually created by the DEO. And all of this scuffle leads into the big storyline with Clarion the Witch Boy, and that is the Sins of Youth. And this is a big event. Even though it took place in between issues 19 and 20, because this stops at issue number 19, it was a huge event that involved the Justice League, the Justice Society, and pretty much it's Clarion, the Witch Boy, if you're not familiar with who he is. He's a magical being. That's all you need to know. He de-ages the adults from the DC universe and makes them into young kids. And then he ages up the young kids, so Young Justice, and of course Stargirl from JSA, and makes them into adults. And there's Lagoon Boy, now known as Lagoon Man. So throughout this crossover, you'll have a series of one-shots done by different creators, and also Peter David doing a couple of the one-shots, writing these particular stories. There's a lot of character development that happens for two particular characters. This is one of my favorites. This is the Batman and Robin one, but it's Sins of Youth, Batboy and Robin. So Bruce Wayne is playing the role of Robin, and Tim Drake is playing the role of Batman, and they have to fool everybody in Gotham into thinking, oh, everything's fine. We are Batman and Robin. But yes, you can find out for yourself how that ends. It is one of my most wanted omnis. I'm so glad that it's here. I'm saddened by the fact that Peter David has been so sick lately. I don't think he could have done an introduction. So I'm glad that Todd Nauck got to do an introduction. And it's a really good introduction. Just showing you how great of a guy he is and how much his art evolved through this series and how much he thanked Peter David for helping him become a better artist just by Peter David suggesting a few changes, like making his art a little bit funnier to land the joke even better. And it's all told through that introduction. Would have loved to have seen Peter David just write a wonderful introduction in his own quirky way about revisiting these characters because they mean a lot to me. So yeah, it was that void that DC was trying to fill where there was no Teen Titans. So what they ended up doing was creating a new team, and they were called the Young Justice. And eventually, they're in volume 2. This will go all the way up to issue number 55 and have a couple of the crossover issues again with, I think, Superboy and Supergirl, if I'm not mistaken. But that in its entirety, that will be everything in a series of 2 omnis. And then, of course, I don't know if they'll add Graduation Day because that isn't written by Peter David. And by that point, people will get upset, I'm sure, with what ends up happening at Graduation Day. But without Graduation Day, we wouldn't have Teen Titans by Jeff Johns and Outsiders by Judd Winnick. There is one more thing I want to note. There's the Old Justice. There is a new character that appears in the pages of issue number 19. This one right here. And she goes by the name Empress. Now, she makes an appearance here. She is mentioned in the Sense of Youth, but she'll make a bigger entrance in the next omnibus. And I love this joke right here when Robin figures out that her name is Empress and everybody's so just shocked. Like, how are you doing this? How do you know? Thought that joke was really funny. That is a Peter David type of joke. All right, let's head to the back matter. So the back matter showcases the secret files. Pretty much the kind of like your hand. So the back matter starts off with some secret file stuff. This is pretty much your handbook of the Young Justice, showcasing these characters, where they first appeared. Like, for example, this is Arrowette. It states her name, her relations with other superheroes, and her first appearance being Impulse number 28. And for some of them, during this time, you didn't know the character's secret identity. And that was another cool thing that Peter David added to these stories, is how long can they keep their secret identities? And when is that young love going to blossom? Because you have Cassie, who is, of course, she is in love with Superboy. She's got that little girl crush on Superboy, had Superboy posters, but when she finally gets to meet him, you'll see that evolution that leads into the Teen Titans by Jeff Johns. So Jeff Johns really borrowed heavily from this as far as their relationship there. And more of the handbook. And then we have trade paperback cover. This is the agenda. These are characters from the Superboy series, but they do play a part in here. This is the 3D Legends of the DC Universe Gallery number 1, and the actual paperback sketches. That's so cool that Todd Nauck was able to find this stuff. And the making of Young Justice. You have original art, and then you have model sheets. So it was his pitch to DC, and of course, when he was given the job, it was his task to come up with character designs for these wonderful superheroes, and of course, supervillains. But this is the Sense of Youth stuff, and then you have character profile sketches here. And then this is an unused Young Justice inventory cover, and this is all by Todd Nauck and Larry Stucker. Now, let's look at the binding. 1,272 pages. It's a big book. And, we've seen bigger, but we've also seen smaller. It's a little tight. And to kind of give you an example, let's go back to that. Yes, this right here, the spread pages. And one of the things I forgot to note is that they are starting to put what issue you're looking at. So, for example, if you're on this particular issue and before you just got the cover, now they're starting to put Young Justice number 3 cover art by Todd Nauck. So it does tell you what issue you're on. And then, of course, the sketches in the back. Love that. But what I wanted to show was this right here. So the way that it lays over. So there is a little bit of gutter loss. Not much, but it's there. Even holding it down, you still get a little bit of art that's missing, but not very much, right? And that's also towards the beginning. The paper stock is that same paper stock they've been using recently, so there is bleed through happening. It's a little thinner than what the glossy paper stock they used to use was, and it's not as glossy, so it feels like a semi-gloss finish to it. And there is a little bit of bleed through, but like I said, you can see like that word bubble bleeding through from the opposite page. We've seen worse, but we've also seen better. But I do want to be as thorough as possible with these overviews, because these books are expensive. This one's $150. So I understand, if that kind of stuff, turns you off, go for the trade paperbacks. Although I think some of them are out of print. But yeah, just a little bleed through like that is what you're going to get, especially through lighter or white pages. But that's it. I'm just so damn glad this is finally out and in my hands. So a big thank you to Peter David and Todd Nauck for making one of the greatest comics ever. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcondition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this book. Let me know in the comments down below if you plan on picking it up, if you have the trade paperbacks, or if you have them in single issues. If you read the stories, what you think of the stories collected in here. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. That's it, everybody. Stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.